Story time about my toxic foster family. So a little background information. Whenever this all happened, I was 19 years old and I was already out of school. But I had been adopted by a family whenever I was 16 years old. And at this point, they had been fostering my brother for about a year. So the only things that they knew about me is whatever my brother told them. Whenever I was 17, my sister ended up passing away and I went into a really deep depression where I would wake up and go to sleep crying for months on end. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty neglected. Like, my family would get $800 to $1,000 every month for me, and I never saw a dime of that money, let alone we would only go shopping probably once a year for clothes, and I never really got to go out. Well, when I went to them about being depressed, they said that if I didn't feel okay after vacation, they would get me help. Well, they lied because it got worse, and they didn't really care. Everybody was getting paid to do chores except for me, and I literally had so much more to do than everybody else in the house. And then I got a boyfriend, like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic foster family. So like I said, everybody else in the house really had no chores to do and they would get paid for whatever the hell they did, even if it was like pick up a dime off the floor. Meanwhile, I was like Cinderella, cleaning the whole house, not getting paid for shit, and then I get a boyfriend who was super caring and acknowledged the fact that I was super emotionally and physically beat down. And the worst part is, I just want to throw this in here, my biological brother was literally no help. When I came to him saying that I was depressed, he was like, oh, you're too sensitive. And then he would literally stalk me 24/7, always knew where I was at, always was making my life even harder than it had to be. So the one morning I got up and I just decided to leave. And then after that, for 1 year straight, I got harassed with emails. I would get tailgated on the freeway. And even though I got away from them, I'm still kind of scared that my biological brother will do something. So yeah. Storytime about why I will never go Black Friday shopping ever again. So a little background information. I was 13 and in 8th grade. And my best friends and I were super excited because we'd never been Black Friday shopping before. So we had a plan that all of us would spend the night at my house and my mom would drive us to the mall at 4 in the morning. So fast forward, it's 4 in the morning and my friends and I are ready to go to the mall and my mom came with us, but we didn't stay with her the whole time. So as we were walking to the first store, we realized that there were these 3 guys behind us that have kind of been following us around since we got into the mall. But we just think it's a coincidence because, you know, it's Black Friday, the mall is packed. There are obviously going to be people going the same exact way as us. So we go into the first store, we get what we want to get, and the men didn't follow us in there. But as we're making our way to the next store, we realized that they're following us again. It was like they waited outside the first store for us to come out. So then we decided that we were going to walk around one of the kiosks a few times to see if they were really following us. And of course they were, so we went into another store and they didn't follow us in that one either. So I go up to one of the workers and I asked if they could possibly like call security or something because there are these guys following us, and she said yeah, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never go Black Friday shopping ever again. So like I said, my friends and I go into the one store and of course they don't follow us in there, so we ask an employee if they can call security. So whenever security got there, I told them that these guys have been following us around since we got into the mall. And then security's like, well, where's your mother? Acting like it was our fault that we could be kidnapped for not being with my mom. So after that, he's like, all right, just go find your mom, you know, I'll talk to them. So I call my mom and I'm like, hey, where are you? Of course, she's on the whole other side of the mall. So my friends and I are going to meet her on the other side of the mall, and we look back to see if the security guard was talking to them, and literally the security guard just walked out of the store and went the complete opposite way. Then we walk up to the security guard and we're like, you didn't even talk to him. And then he turns around, rolls his eyes, goes over and starts talking to these guys. And then we continue to the store that my mom was at whenever we decided to stop at Starbucks to get something to drink. So after 10 minutes of waiting in line, you know, we turn around and we see these guys standing at the end of the line just staring at us. So we get out of line and we decided to just go straight to the store that my mom was at. And when we got there, we told her what was going on. So she was like, okay, let me get these few things and then we can leave, like for part 3.
Since I can remember.
Part 3 about why I will never ever go Black Friday shopping ever again. So like I said, we got out of line and we went straight to the store that my mom was at, and she was like, okay, just let me get these few things and then we can leave. So we start walking towards the exit and then I'm like, Mom, they're still following us. So she turns around and she realizes they're literally standing 2 feet behind us. So we decided to go into one of the stores and we asked one of the employees if they could also call the head of security. And whenever head of security got there, she literally tore them a new you-know-what. After that, my mom tries to go and point out the guys and they're not standing there anymore. So they're like, well, what do you want us to do? And then my mom's like, well, you can walk us out to our car. So they walk us out to our car and then they stand there while we're getting in. My mom starts the car and she starts backing up and we literally run over something. And all of a sudden we hear like screaming and moaning, and the security guards look under the car and literally one of the guys who was following us is literally laying under our cars with a knife. And as soon as that happened, there was literally a van parked right across from our car. The van drove away really fast, but the police ended up catching up to it and they found like 8 girls in that van.
Story time of how I burned down my entire house when I was 8 years old.
So basically, we had so many candles in the house, I guess just because my mom was obsessed with candles. I was also obsessed with fire. So every time I seen the candle, I would put my finger in the fire. And no, it didn't hurt me whatsoever. I guess it was just amusing to me. And everybody called me a pyro. So one day I was scrolling on Musical.ly, and on like the Feature Me page, I saw something with a candle. And it was like how to make your own candle or something like that. But you had to make your own candle out of a candle. So I went into my room and I closed my door. And like the first step was melting the candle all the way. So I lit the candle and then I put a piece of paper in there. I don't know why I did, but I did. And the fire started getting so big, so I lifted the piece of paper and I threw it on my rug. And I didn't want to get in trouble for fire on the floor, so I just left my room and left it alone. And I kid you not, just a couple minutes later, I hear the smoke detector going off. And my older brother screaming. I'm running out of time, like, for part 2. Part 2 of how I burned down my entire house at just 8 years old. So continuing on with the story, after I hear the smoke alarms going off and my brother screaming, I knew exactly what I did. And I blamed it all on my brother. And to this day, they still think it's my brother. Even though it was in my room, but my family believed whatever I said. Anyways, the whole backside of the house was on fire, and we all rush out of the house. And of course, my mom takes care of it. I'm pretty sure she called 911. Well, duh. Sadly, our 2 cats, 2 bunnies, and 4 hamsters were in the house. And our bird, but our bird was getting ready to pass anyways. I'm not sure how, but the house caught on fire so quickly, and the entire thing just blew up into flames. There might have been something else that the fire triggered to make it more big, I guess. I don't really know how to word that. But we ended up raising enough money to move to a different house because we lost every single one of our belongings. When the house burned down, there was only one wall standing, and it was the wall of pictures of my grandma who passed 10 years ago.
Story time about how I came out to my homophobic parents. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 and I was a freshman in high school. And all throughout middle school, I had been questioning my sexuality because I didn't really know what I was into, as do most kids my age. Well, due to this, I was bullied in school because people would always ask me, oh, do you like boys or girls? And when I would say that I don't know, they would call me slurs. So anytime that I got into a relationship, I would keep it a secret, and the only person that knew was my best friend. But the summer before my freshman year, I got together with my current boyfriend, and we're gonna call him Andrew. Andrew and I met through Snapchat through a mutual friend. We started FaceTiming all the time, and we found out that we lived in the same area, so we started hanging out all the time as well. Well, eventually him and I started dating, and after about 3 or 4 weeks, we took our relationship a little bit further, and his parents knew that he was gay and that we were in a relationship. But my parents, on the other hand, did not know. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I came out to my very homophobic parents. So like I said before, my boyfriend and I had decided to take our relationship a step further, and his parents knew that he was gay and that him and I were in a relationship. But my parents, on the other hand, did not know. They just thought that him and I were best friends that hung out every single day. But yeah, my parents think that doing the nasty before marriage is a sin, being gay is a sin. Pretty much doing anything is a sin. So the one day I was in my room watching RuPaul's Drag Race. By the way, I don't know if I pronounced that right. And then my mom walks in and she says, I don't want you watching these men in wigs and heels, acting like females, blah, blah, blah. That's a sin. Like, Mom, go get a fucking life. Thanks. And then she says, if I find out you're a part of this, you're gonna need God and Jesus to protect you from me. So my boyfriend and I are in complete shock. Well, then I finally decided that I was going to grow some balls and tell my mom that I was a part of that community. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I came out to my super homophobic parents. So like I said, my mom was like, if you're a part of this community, you're gonna need God and Jesus to protect you from me. And I was really upset. I started crying, and my boyfriend, he's like comforting me. I finally decided to grow some balls and tell her that I was in fact a part of the community. Well, I ended up getting my ass beat. They also told me that they were gonna take me to a priest to get an exorcism. So I basically moved out of my parents' house and I moved into my uncle's house, who's a part of the LGBTQ community. And he's in full support of my boyfriend and I's relationship. I blocked both of my parents and I haven't talked to them ever since I moved out. Well, that's a lie. The only time that I did talk to them was to wish them a happy Mother's Day and happy Father's Day. But other than that, I decided that I want to be happy, and to be happy, I had to keep them out of my life. Story time. Story time. Is blood really thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So a little background information. I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I had just started dating this guy that my friends introduced me to. He was extremely attractive, really smart, and really kind. Literally had all the traits a girl could want in a boyfriend. So him and I are talking for a while, and then we start dating, and we were amazing together. And my sister had just came back home from teaching in Thailand. Surprisingly, her and I got super close because we always used to fight with each other. And now we were inseparable. The only issue was she was 25 years old acting like a child. She always wanted to be at my boyfriend's house with him and his family. Weird, I know. Anyway, so she was always over there with them, and I thought that maybe she was just lonely. Wrong, of course. Now, of course, like any other relationship, mine wasn't perfect, but my boyfriend and I started having more problems than usual when my sister showed up. He was being super weird, and all the signs pointed to him cheating on me. Like for part 2. Part 2, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, my sister started spending more time at my boyfriend's house. I thought that she was lonely, but then my boyfriend started acting weird and all the signs pointing to him cheating on me. But I ignored it because I thought that him and I were in love like in the movies. And also, if I broke up with him, it would be like breaking up with his family because I loved them like my own. Fast forward, his sister ends up getting married and my sister and I were invited to the wedding. Fast forward, everybody gets drunk. We end up spending the night at his cousin's house and something was off with my boyfriend. He wasn't really talking to me. He wouldn't touch me. He pretty much acted like he was done with me. Well, then there's my sister who was flirting and touching him like it was normal. Fast forward a month, I asked my sister if anything happened between them and she goes, I think we slept together. So I confronted him about it and he just laughs and he's like, it wasn't that serious. So I end up breaking up with him and then I start finding unhealthy ways to cope, aka drinking. And eventually I got so lonely to the point where I forgave my sister. And then I started seeing this other guy and he was amazing, like for part 3. Part 3, is blood thicker than water? Metaphorically speaking, of course. So like I said, I forgave my sister and then I got a new guy. He was amazing. And then my sister started begging to hang out with us. Now, of course, you would have thought that I learned from the first time, but I did not. I just completely ignored the signs that God gave me that she was a bad person. Okay, I guess not a bad person. She just didn't give a fuck about my feelings. Well, the one weekend his parents went away and they needed him to house sit, so he invited me over to house sit with him. And then guess who tags along? My sister. I mean, I guess I could have told her that she couldn't come, but at the same time, I was trying to be a forgiving person, okay? And I thought that she wouldn't do this shit to me again. Well, I was wrong because on the last night of house sitting, we all decided that we were gonna get drunk. And my sister made sure that I got more effed up than everybody else. I ended up actually getting alcohol poisoning and I almost died. But she didn't care. She was too focused on sleeping with the new guy. The worst part of this is they started dating and my mom was on her side. It's been 3 years and I'm still trying to forgive her and my family.
My brother's allergic to pork, but how come when his best friend Nick comes over, he says, "Oh yes, give me that sausage."
Did you know that Roblox the game was actually based on a true horrible story? In 1987, there was a man with a very chunky face, and there was also a man with very oily, streaky hair. The whole town thought that their appearance was super monstrous and hard to look at, so they locked them up in a tower. Then, to be able to survive for food, they were forced to climb all the way to the top to get food. But in order to climb, there were obstacles, and so they were forced to play these obstacles called obbies. The second guy with very oily hair started getting sick of this after 16 days, and therefore he told his other friend, the blockhead, "Hey, why not let's cut my hair and let's cook it and eat?" Then the second guy said, "This tastes like bacon." After that, he started eating the second guy's leg. But the second guy still survived miraculously, and therefore the first guy's name was Bacon and the second guy's name was Slender. And this is how Roblox was made. Share this to a friend now.
This is why you shouldn't let just anybody around your kids. Wear a mask while you watch this story time. I promise you're gonna want to. So when I was around 15 years old, I started doing really bad in school. My parents were really poor and my dream was to go to college, so I needed to work my ass off so I could get a scholarship. But with how my grades were looking, it did not seem like I was gonna get one. My school offered after school tutoring classes, so I started taking them. Just in case I didn't get that scholarship, my parents started working late hours so they could pay for my college. They also hired a part-time babysitter / housekeeper. Mind you, my parents worked all day until super late at night. Our job was to arrive after we all left to clean up the messes that we didn't have time to clean up in the morning or the night before. Then she was supposed to pick me up from my tutoring classes, stay at the house and watch me until my bedtime, which was about 9 p.m. Then she was supposed to leave. But one day we were sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast and we all catch a drift of this terrible smell. My dad finds out that the smell is coming from the basement. As soon as he opened the door, the smell just hit you in the face. We all go down there to check where the smell's coming from. We see a pile of human feces. Laying next to it is my babysitter. Part 2 of why you should never let just anybody around your kids. So we go to check out the smell in the basement. And there my babysitter is, laying next to a pile of her own shit. My parents wake her up and everyone's covering their mouth and nose with our shirt. I'll go upstairs because the smell. I let my parents deal with that shit. literally. I hear my dad yelling at her and telling her to get out. She explains that she used to be a full-time nanny and she has nowhere else to go because they kicked her out. If she was shitting on the floor, who the fuck wouldn't kick her out? She says she did that because she gets really bad anxiety at night and can't go upstairs or we would hear her and wake up. Because you have anxiety does not give you the right to shit on the floor. I have anxiety. Do you see me shitting on the floor? So my parents kick her out anyways, like any reasonable person would. And we thought that was the last that we were gonna see of her. But one night at like 2 a.m. in the morning, I hear a tapping on my window. So I wake up and there's my babysitter staring at me through my window. She looks sad and she like motions for me to let her in. I'm looking at her like, the fuck no? And so that sadness quickly turns to anger and she starts banging on my window. Part 3 of why you shouldn't let just anybody around your kids. Like I said, they're my stalker ass babysitter is banging on my window at 2 a.m. in the morning, and so I quickly go to get my parents because what if she breaks that shit and breaks in? Once I leave my room, I hear the banging stop, but I still go to tell my parents what just happened. My dad calls the police and they check around the area and she's nowhere to be found. The smell goes away, we don't see her anymore, so we think everything's good now. But one day my mom texts me and tells me that she left me a tray of cookies on the dining table for when I get back from tutoring. Well, I didn't see any cookies or a tray. When my mom gets home, she wakes me up and asks me where I put the tray. I told her that I didn't even see the tray of cookies. So my mom tries looking for the tray because she needs it for when she cooks. She never finds it. Mind you, my family like never goes to our basement. But one day my dad needs some tools to help fix his buddy's car. He also notices that the tray we were looking for is in the basement. We're all freaked out at this point because our babysitter was secretly living in our house. Now things are going missing and being misplaced. And after looking around for any suspicion that she might have been there again, we notice a broken lock in the window of our basement. Part 4 of why you shouldn't let just anybody around your kids. So after putting 2 and 2 together and realizing that my babysitter had been sneaking into our house through our basement window, and also noticing that things have been going missing, we call the police and report her because it was just so obviously her. She did not do a good job at all at covering her tracks. When the police look her up, they say she has no criminal record and that she's not enlisted in any housing. So she was homeless. So my parents go ahead and fix the lock on our basement window. I'm guessing once she found out that she couldn't get in anymore, she stopped trying. So afterwards, my parents stopped working as much and I got a friend to start dropping me off at home after my tutoring classes. Once I would get home, I would do all the cleaning just to help my parents out. So then they could keep working their long hours so I could go to college. My parents were kind of iffy about leaving me at home by myself. Child, I could fight. So everything was good and we never saw her again.